Hey guys, Graham and Chris back here with you again with Out of Left Field, brought to you by the Grueling Truth Network and MLB Mayhem. Been another busy week in baseball. Thankfully, we are not going to get too much into injuries this week, although there have been plenty. But we actually got a pretty decent amount. Jeurys Familia does go to the DL. We will touch on that. Is Tim Tebow up for promotion in minor league baseball? Plus, of course, Derek Jeter's number being retired in the Bronx on Sunday, the 14th, on Mother's Day of all days, which is great for him. So he put the ball in play. Chris, the aforementioned Tim Tebow, there has been some buzz around him this week, and a possibility with numbers that are respectable for a guy who hasn't been focusing on baseball over the last 7 or 8 years, that he might actually be seeing promotion to the advanced affiliate of the New York Mets, the Port St. Lucie Mets, which is actually about an hour and a half south of me in Port St. Lucie, Florida.
Yeah, and I mean, from everything that we know about Tim Tebow and everything we've heard from Tim Tebow in the past, we can probably guess that he's pretty excited about that promotion to possibly high A affiliate down there in Port St. Lucie, you said it's called? That's an odd name.
Yeah, I think he's excited.
You think so? Well, he was excited about being a Jet, so I can only imagine he's excited about getting promoted to high A. And
Timmy, are you excited?
I'm excited about my future.
Okay, yes, he is excited. Okay, that's good. We have official word that Tim Tebow is excited about the possibility of being promoted in minor league baseball.
So the thing is that you and I have talked about Tim Tebow sort of ad nauseum, I think, and we've discussed the fact that Tim Tebow, if he's going to make it in baseball and if he's going to earn any respect in baseball, he's going to have to earn it. It can't be any situation where it looks like his popularity or his own fame from football is giving him a leg up or getting him preferential treatment in the Mets minor league system. And when you look at his numbers, 250, a 330 on base, slugging 370, it looks like a promotion at those numbers is, in fact, some sort of preferential treatment. However, that's over the entire 28 games of this season so far. He did hit a home run in his first and third games, but he hasn't gone long since. But over the last 16 games, he came into those 16 games hitting 156 and brought that average up to 250. He's hit 327 with a 413 on base and a 436 slugging with 4 doubles and a triple. I don't care who you are. I don't care what level of baseball you're playing at. Those are good numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look, he's been a streaky player. I mean, and he's getting himself comfortable, obviously, in minor league baseball in that system. But I mean, a guy who, for all intents and purposes, really hasn't had a long slump thus far. A hit here, a hit there. He's got a couple of 3-hit ball games. Not much, more than that. But again, at most you're seeing maybe a 3 game. Actually, I only see 2 games in a row where he had no hits before he got out of that slump, which is a good thing. It's something that you want to see where he's not in his head. If he has a couple of rough games, he's getting right back into it. And like you said, in the last 7 days, he's hitting 364 with a 916 OPS. So yeah, overall, it hasn't been. He started off hot. There's obviously going to be a ton of, I don't say expectations, but the attention on him is going to be higher because of who he is. But when you are in basic rookie ball, or just above rookie ball in a low A, and you're hitting a respectable 250 with 11 driven in, 4 doubles, a triple, 25 hits out of 100 ABs, and you scored 15 runs. I think that for what the minor league system is at that level, when you're getting out of short season and going into full season, I think it's a logical promotion for Tim Tebow to go to the Port St. Lucie Mets because the way that he's hitting You want to see if that can continue when you're seeing guys who have been in the system a little bit longer, who may have a little bit more on that fastball, a little bit more command on those pitches, and see if that's something that you're actually going to get a good return on your investment, more than just putting butts in the seats in spring training and in some of your minor league affiliates.
Absolutely, because you're going to want to see Tim Tebow face the best. And as you go deeper into the minor league system, you're going to put him in front of better and better pitchers. And it can only benefit him, and him doing well can only benefit the Mets. I personally don't know that we'll ever see Tim Tebow in a New York Mets uniform during the regular season playing as an everyday Met. But I don't doubt that there's a possibility that he could make a 40-man roster at some time in the future and be one of those guys who might typically play down in AAA and get called up as needed and then come up in September for the 40-man expanded.
I think it's a possibility. Now, the one thing that he needs to improve on is obviously his. As with any hitter, when you're facing a pitcher that throws with the same dominant arm that you throw with, so obviously lefty on lefty, righty on righty, lefty on lefty. In this case, he struggles there. He's hitting 282 against righties, only 136 against lefties. But here's the one stat I'll give you that that worries me. With 2 outs and runners in scoring position, he's hitting 143. So, and I know that you aren't a big thing on clutch and whatnot, and it's baseball, it's a game of failure. But it's one of those things where, obviously he needs to be able to come through in those situations where it's necessary, and he needs to see more pitches from left-handed pitchers, get himself more comfortable in that box, seeing those, those sliders running away from him, seeing those curveballs, trying to front door and put it on that inside corner, or get something running away, on the outside corner. So he's got work to do. There's no question, but he's in a system right now where going into high A with hitting 250, that's how you get better. You see better competition, and I think that there's no doubt that Tim Tebow, as much as you want to talk about, him in the past, is a guy who will step up and face whatever is coming at him. He is going to look to beat whatever is in front of him, and that's a good thing because he has things he needs to improve on, but he's not going to shy away from that competition, from that level of improvement he needs to make.
So Tim Tebow getting promoted is probably a great thing. I know that we were going to move on to Jeurys Familia next because we wanted to talk about his injury, but I just got breaking news that I think that we need to share. The Washington Nationals have just announced, and now for everybody listening, I know you guys aren't going to hear this until Sunday, so you'll already know about this, but it's 12:15 Pacific time on Saturday afternoon, and the Washington Nationals have just announced that they have locked up Bryce Harper for his final year of arbitration, the 2018 season, at a record $21.625 million for the single year. That locks him up. He's now eligible to become a free agent after the 2018 season. That is his final year of arbitration, but he is going to make a record amount of money for next year, which it looks right now like he might be worth it. He's hitting 372 with 10 dingers and 29 ribbies. So if he can keep that pace up, he'll only be behind, Ryan Zimmerman for the Triple Crown at that point.
Yeah, and Zim is just having an ungodly start to his season. I think
Zim,
this is a smart move.
Zim, by the way, is 32 years old and hit 215 last year. So, yeah, his 393 with 13 home runs and 34 ribbies is a remarkable start to the season.
Yes. I think this is a smart move by the Nationals. You don't want to go to arbitration for a second year, especially with Bryce Harper doing what he's doing now. His arbitration numbers were obviously going to go up. It made sense to go to arbitration last year because Bryce Harper clearly struggled from what was his MVP season, I believe 2 years ago in 2015. Correct me if I am wrong on that. But I think this is a very smart move for them to do. And, I think what we're, you're trying to keep this guy from going to probably New York, some big market in 2019. By going ahead and seeing that, hey, you're doing, we're going to go ahead and ease your mind. We're going to pay you this. We think that you're worth it. I think you kind of stroke the ego a little bit, and you lock up a guy who you're going to have for one more year. They obviously don't want to part ways with him. I think that the GM sees this as being a possibility of kind of a negotiation tool of, hey, we were fair to you, and we came to you even before we went to arbitration to go ahead and fix this up, take care of you. Now let's talk about taking care of the club long term. So I like this choice by the Nationals because they weren't going to release him or try and trade him next year when they're most likely going to be making a run for another NL East title and a run into the National League pennant in the World Series.
So here's my question. Obviously, making single season arbitration record money, does this indicate that they're going to offer him record contract money in the future in 2019, do you think?
I think he is going to demand that kind of money. He's already getting a chance to, obviously, like you said, a record deal, $21.6 million for next season. So he's going to have a chance to play under a high contract for 1 year to see how he handles himself at that level. As long as he does what he's doing now, I think they're looking for more leadership out of him. He needs to go ahead and take a bigger role in that clubhouse if he hasn't already. He's the young guy, but he is the face of that franchise. He is the face of that city. Let's be honest. As Adnan Verk was talking about this week on ESPN Radio, Washington is probably one of the saddest sports towns, in sports right now. I mean, the Wizards are they tied it up with the Celtics. The Capitals go out. You don't get a lot of, hard-nosed sports fans, it seems, with the Redskins and whatnot. And again, I have family who lives in Washington and big sports fans, but they need a win in that town. They have a great option with the Nationals, and this sets up Bryce Harper for a very big payday. And I think it gives, like I said, it gives the Nats a leg up to go ahead and offer him a huge deal. I don't think there's any question he's going to test the market for free agency. But the Nationals need to hold on to Bryce Harper in 2019 to have a chance to keep doing what they're doing. So we'll see. Their arms are getting older, right? We've talked about Strauss and Scherzer, so he needs to look at everything. Well,
and with I mean, we can only expect Jason Worth's retirement, right, at this point?
I think so. I mean, it has to be on the way. I mean, he was kind of in his prime with the Phillies in 2008, and we're almost 9 years past that. I mean, it's about time for him to pull a Ryan Howard.
That big 10-year contract, wow. That big 10-year contract that they gave Jason Worth is coming to a close here pretty soon. In fact, I think in 2019 or maybe 2020, which is going to free up quite a bit of cash to go after Bryce Harper if they want to. And maybe it is something that they're going to do. Who knows? I know for a fact that if he keeps putting up numbers like he's putting up, the Yankees are going to go after him, and they're going to throw huge cash at him.
It is actually this year will be he is signed through 2017. So his contract ends this year. I will be surprised if they offer him another tender. He'll be 39 going into 2018. So yeah, Jason Worth, that will free up. Maybe they offer him a 2 or 3 year veteran deal, maybe a 2-year deal with a 3rd-year option. But yeah, that will end this year. He's making $21 million as he has for the last 2 seasons as well.
Yeah, I can't see him sticking around much longer. The guy's getting older. He's lost more than just a step or two out there in the outfield, and his bat's just not what it used to be. Like you said, he was in his prime. He was in his prime 10 years ago. So, good for Bryce Harper, though, I think, and good for the Washington Nationals too. What's not good is this injury of Jeurys Familia, who underwent surgery the other day to remove a blood clot, an arterial blood clot in his shoulder. which not just his shoulder and his pitching arm, which is not just dangerous in that it's going to probably cost him the rest of the season. Arterial blood clots are something that could cost him his life. If this goes on unchecked, or if this doesn't get found, or if that blood clot dislodges and moves elsewhere in the body, this is something that's possibly life-threatening to Jeurys Familia. So
right.
Hopefully he's doing well after surgery. All the reports are that he is doing well. But several months is the sort of enigmatic word on his possible return. I doubt we'll see him before the end of this season.
And that's, I mean, again, we keep talking about what's happening in New York, and that's rough. And obviously, I mean, we talked about blood clots before. I think Dylan Gee was a pitcher a couple of years ago who was dealing with blood clots. It's not incredibly rare. I think, obviously, to the forefront with blood clots probably brings you to Chris Bosh in the NBA of the Miami Heat, who developed blood clots in his legs, obviously being very tall. That makes it even more difficult. But it is something that you have to be concerned with, because if it happens once, and there can be a possibility that you begin to have this issue on a more consistent basis. And they are thankfully checking consistently, which is a good thing. And, Mets manager Terry Collins said, quote, about the injury, quote, "This is a big one. This guy is arguably one of the best closers in the game. We lost one of the best starters in the game for a while. Now we've lost one of the best closers in the game for a while. Yesterday was a tough day for a lot of us. Today we got to get ourselves ready to play tonight. We'll slot somebody else in those spots and move on," end quote. So this is becoming a very difficult time for that ball club. I've heard mention that maybe there's an issue with the training staff, obviously more so with things like with Syndergaard's injury to Groms. This is just unfortunately an internal thing that happens, and not much that you can do. And the odd one is there really weren't any telltale signs. He said he was feeling a little bit of tingling, some numbness, and they checked it, and then all of a sudden, they found it. But on the bright side, those trainers are, according to Terry Collins, checking those guys daily to make sure that nothing is developed without their knowledge, and if it is, they go ahead and take care of it to make sure that their long-term health, is clearly the more important, focus by that ball club.
Obviously, yeah, and like I said, this is a really dangerous thing that happened to him. It's a really dangerous condition. We've seen it in other athletes, and the last thing we want to see is this become something that's ongoing, or something that ultimately ends up being life-threatening or ends his career. So
exactly, and Terry Collins is exactly right. I mean, you have a guy who had 51 saves last year, made the All-Star game as a closer. Jeurys Familia was 17th in MVP voting, which is not anything to be, to laugh at. Granted, yeah, he was under 500, he was 3-4, but when you go 77 and 2/3 innings and you have 51 saves, I mean, it's a pretty solid, a good solid year for you, with a 1.21 WHIP, and less than he had 3.5 walks per 9, almost 10 strikeouts per 9 that he pitched. He's a good piece for that team, and similar to what we've talked about with the Royals, the Mets window is rapidly closing.
Right.
I think their window is the one that has the broken springs. It just crashes down, and you hope the windows don't break. I hope for them that maybe next year is a chance. I think we can both rule out this year, which we'll get into later on, during the season on the show. But yeah, when three of your big arms are having issues plus Familia, it's tough.
I think it's fair to say that, given the injuries this season, not just to the Mets, but to all over baseball, that our preseason brackets are probably going to see a shift as we move into actually picking the teams that we think are going to go to the postseason deeper into the season.
Just a tad, yeah. And I was saying this to you off air a day or two ago, that it surprises me just how much the NL East has become really the worst division in baseball. I mean, just teams not able to really, hold on. Obviously, the Braves and the Phillies are going to be that bottom tier. We didn't expect a lot out of the Marlins, although they're giving it their best option. And then the Mets just kind of, I think, all floored us with their inability to just stay healthy and make things happen.
Yeah, and I think we'd all like to see, after that 2015 sort of heartbreaker, I think we'd all like to see the Mets back in the big game, back in the Fall Classic, and maybe take one, and get sort of a footing in the city of New York that they kind of don't have right now, especially with an unexpected surge from the Yankees. New York is just really sort of reapplying itself as a Yankees town.
Yeah, and everybody that, and again, guys, we appreciate you always chiming in on our social media pages, at OO Left Field on Twitter, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook, and of course, Out of Left Field baseball community. When we had a show a couple of weeks ago and we said, who's the best team in New York? Everyone kept, I kept getting back. It was still the Yankees. They're young, they're vibrant. They've got a good core, can get younger on the mound, obviously, but that, some still hang their hat on 26 world championships. But I think big picture, yes, that it does come down, that right now, until the Mets can supplant themselves as a championship contending team, which they have yet to do, it will stay a Yankees town. And speaking of the New York Yankees, you and I talked last week. Obviously, we had a marathon game. It was frigid in Wrigley Field. Absolutely, it was not the kind of weather you want to play in, especially play 2 whole games in. And the game goes 18 innings, right? The Yankees end up winning, and we've begun to see a bit of a slide for the Cubs, which when Joe Madden was asked, the Cubs skipper said, "My guys just need rest. They're tired," which some saw as a cop-out. I think it's a pretty logical reason when you're getting into your hotel at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. to play a game in less than 12 hours. You're going to be, it's going to take you a while to catch up. And
not
then
to mention
last night,
you played 2 games the day before.
Exactly.
In a row.
And then last night we get one that ended in a very happy ending for you, where Buster Posey walks it off in the 17th inning with a deep shot into left field. So there has been discussion. Buster Olney, ESPN senior baseball writer, wrote an article on this about really is the extra inning part of baseball on its way to extinction? Is it going to become an endangered species in the sport? You told me your takes on this, and as an umpire, I'm just going, I don't want to be out there for 6 hours. So sure, you end it. I walk, happy because I don't get that half inning off in the dugout to, sit if I'm not batting. But you really surprised me with your take, because obviously we are very old school. Yet your idea on this, I think, rivals what most guys think. Even Buster was kind of against it, but you, I think, Chris, are kind of for it, maybe just a little bit.
Well, I wasn't. I am old school. I'd leave my game alone, let him play, let him throw 4 pitches to walk a guy. But marathon games aren't just hard for fans, right? It's not just worrying about people leaving the ballpark in the 13th inning of a game that goes 18 innings and those guys playing in a mostly empty ball field. It's hard on ball players. And I was dead set against the idea of a tie in baseball or ending an extra innings game without a clear winner until about the 15th inning of that Yankees-Cubs marathon. Because you see Rizzo out there, he's standing on first base, he'd taken a 99-mile-an-hour fastball to the wrist in the 9th inning, and he's hurting. And it's cold. And he's out there, and he's trying to loosen that arm up. There's a huge knot under that under that compression band that he wears, and it's just, you look at it and you go, man, these guys could really, really hurt themselves. They got to be tired. They got to be over loose. They got to the impetus for injury in 18 innings is just too high. And every other game in the world, every other sport in the world has a way to adjudicate ties for postseason play. Football does it. Basketball does it. Soccer does it.
Where does basketball have ties?
Basketball, after a certain number of extra quarters, can actually decide to end the game if it's been too long. It's never used, but they have a way to adjudicate it if it does. Football obviously has done it for the last 3 seasons. We've seen ties in football, and they've been adjudicated for postseason play. The Seattle Seahawks made the postseason with a tie in their record just a couple of years ago.
I believe last year a team did not make the playoffs because of a tie. They went for the win, they went for the win, ended up taking the loss, and I believe a tie would have allowed them in.
Right.
And I want to give you some numbers here. Last year was actually the fewest number of extra inning games in the past 5 seasons, counting all the way from 2013. Last year there were 185 total games that went into extra innings. 63 went 12 plus. This year there have been 49 games in extras. Only 13 have gone 12 plus. If you look more often than not, it's maybe just under a third of games, or just over, depending on the year, but right about 33% of all extra inning games go into 12 innings and beyond. So I guess the question really is then, what would you recommend that baseball do? At what point do you go ahead and drop a cutoff?
In my opinion, I think that 12 innings should be the maximum for a regular season game, right? At that point, you've given each team an opportunity to theoretically bat through their order again, right? If you consider that there's 3 outs in an inning, 3 guys can go up to the plate in a perfect inning, then with 3 extra innings, all 9 guys get to bat again. Once both teams have an opportunity to bat through their order again, if neither of those teams scored during the regular season, they should call it. The reason I think that is because if you go 14 or 15 innings, right, and one of your guys gets hurt, then what have you really gained? You've lost one of your players to a game in May. Not good, right? It doesn't mean anything in May. While I understand that as you come down to the wire in September, suddenly every game means something. In May, losing a player in the 15th inning of a marathon game is going to hurt you through May and June, and then those games that you could potentially lose following that player's injury are more important in September. You see what I mean?
I understand it. I think my issue is that, it's rare that we had 2 marathon games happen in the same week. More often than not, we're not going, into 16, 17, 18 innings. Of course, it can happen, but to me, a tie, with the lack of extra inning games that you're going to have over the course of a season, in this case, there would have been 13 games that went over 12 innings. I understand that the baseball season is incredibly long. I mean, 162 games is horrendous on the body, and that's a different topic for a different day. To me, I have an issue with the fairness of just putting certain teams on hey, some guys have a tie scale, some don't. It's the reason that I think that the sport that had it figured out really is hockey is because they go by a point system. You get a certain number of points for a win, a certain number of points, I think for a loss, and then a tie. I believe whoever wins out of that gets the maximum number of points, and whoever loses takes, I think 1 point if the game goes into penalties or whatever it may be. Again, I'm not an NHL nut, but that's what I believe is how it is. To me, baseball has gone on long enough with extra inning games and the small number amount that goes beyond 12. And I've been involved in those games. They're tough, they're taxing, they're grueling, especially as an official. But to me, I can't in good conscience say, let's go ahead and call a game in the 12th, strike 3 called, and then stand up and just walk off the field. All right, good job. To me, it kind of leaves an emptiness there, and that may be more as a fan looking in, because like you said, and again, not having played a ton, and I don't know how many extra inning games that you played in. I know in high school, obviously, it's a 7-inning affair. But is it? Are you going to lose momentum? Are you going to have that kind of downtrodden feeling because you tied, or because you lost a game in extras? And you'll have to help me with whomever the Giants were playing yesterday. But when Buster Posey hit that home run, it looked more like just a look of relief on all parties concerned. Okay, it's over. We can come back tomorrow. Here we go. Right. And I think that's fine. I don't see a reason to change the game. If you're changing the game, yes, you can say that it is in a reason of player safety, but that's the case. The union needs to get involved. Otherwise, if it's teams that are saying it, they're saying it for the bottom line, because you're running a stadium with people that are leaving and they're not buying concessions. You've stopped serving beer. They're not eating as much. Like you said, the stadium is going to probably empty because it's getting late. It sounds more like a money grab than something for players.
So, and here's my problem with that argument. It's just not factual, right? So, yes, they've stopped serving beer in the 7th inning, but realistically, a game going 18 innings doesn't really affect the bottom line of the club, because they've already gotten the 9 innings of concessions that they expected to get for that game. It doesn't cost them any extra except maybe the cost of the lights to run the field for that period of time. Anything they get above and beyond those 9 innings in concessions is extra money for them. So that's just simply not a factual statement. Or it's not a fair argument. I won't say it's not a factual statement, but it's not a fair argument. And to say that it's not about player safety is also not a fair argument, because it's been shown that the likelihood of injury occurring after in extended play is far higher than it is during normal play, because their bodies are conditioned to play 9 innings. When they go 12, their bodies can handle that extra play. But when you go 18 innings, and I realize it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, and you go 18 innings, the likelihood of you being injured playing 2 consecutive games is far higher, due to exhaustion, due to muscle fatigue, due to all of those things, and all the possibilities that every baseball game carries along with it are now doubled in an 18-inning game. Anything can happen in that 18 innings to injure a player. And that. So
let me ask you this: so do you want to see something like, say, something in hockey? If you had to find a happy medium, where would a period break make you happy? Where if you get through a full 9 and you stop, okay, let them rest and then come back out and continue playing.
No, that doesn't work
because
for me.
It's the same idea as a doubleheader.
Right. And look, I'm not a huge fan of the idea of doubleheaders anyway. But when you're playing with the 25-man roster and you're trying to win a game in extra innings, you use everyone. When you're playing a doubleheader, you don't. And taking a break after 9 innings isn't going to make a whole lot of sense if you come out, play the 10th inning, and somebody wins and you go home. That doesn't make any sense. So you don't know a game is going to be 18 innings, right?
Exactly.
No one expects it to happen. So
right.
when you get into the 15th, 16th, 17th inning, you use every single man on your roster. You have no options for replacement anymore, and guys are exhausted. Pitchers are exhausted. You're pushing relievers past their ability to pitch. You're going to hurt guys, okay? Because you're trying to win this ball game.
Here's my answer. If you want to change this, then either lower the roster or lower the number of pitchers allowed in the bullpen. How about that? So then when you're getting into the 13th and 14th inning, it's like, oh, crap, okay, either my relievers are going to be hitting or I'm throwing position guys out there. Which at that point is probably BP, and the game's going to end relatively early. Unless you're David Ross, you throw a 1-2-3 inning.
But is that the kind of baseball you want to watch?
No, but I also don't. But I also don't want to watch baseball that has ties in it.
Okay, but would you rather watch baseball that in the regular season ends after 12 innings, everybody goes home, they get to their look? The problem that I really had with that Cubs-Yankees games that I didn't necessarily have with the Giants and the Reds last night is the Giants and the Reds are going to play again today. Granted, they're going to play an earlier game than they played yesterday, but it's not by any means a day game. So they're going to get some rest. They're not going anywhere. That game in Chicago.
So because it was getaway day, that's what is it? It's getaway day, and then they get in late, and it hampers them for another week and a half.
Weeks of it could be. It's going to be days before they get a day off, and that day off is now going to come after having played an extra game. Now that was a getaway game for both teams, right? The
plus
Yankees had to go back. Yeah, plus the umpire. The Yankees had to go back to New York. The umpires had to go to the West Coast, and the Cubs had to go to Denver.
Yeah, Cubs went to Colorado. Actually, the umpire came to Miami.
I thought they went to the West Coast.
No, Don Mattingly got ejected in the first inning, arguing balls and strikes on a couple of rough.
That's right.
Rough ones. Yeah.
And if you were one of the officials on that 18-inning crew and Don Mattingly came out and started giving you crap, you'd have probably dumped him too.
Potentially.
But so the thing is, those guys, each of those teams had to travel halfway across the country. Each of those teams
had to. But then at what point do you start managing
stop
for a
talking
tie?
and let me talk. Each of those teams had to travel halfway across the country. Neither of those teams got to the airport before 2 a.m. Central Time. They each had 2 3-hour flights ahead of them. That means that the time zone that they were used to, it's now 5 a.m. before they can reach a bed. Then they have to get up and play a game the next day. That doesn't work for me. It just doesn't.
I understand.
I would rather see baseball deal with the fact that they have to adjudicate ties at the end of the season, which is not difficult to do. Hey, you're 96 and you have 96 wins and a single tie. This team has 96 wins and no ties. Guess what? You don't go to the postseason.
But that's the issue at that point. Then, so what if your Giants are 96 whatever and 1? Because I'm not doing the math right now, and the Dodgers are 96 and whatever. And because you have that tie now, hey, you didn't have a game that was decided as a win or a loss. That's what's going to keep you out of the playoffs. That's awful.
No,
that's
awful. Then have the Giants and the Dodgers play a playoff game.
So have them play another game.
If the situation comes down to that 2 teams are separated just by that tie, have those 2 teams play a playoff game.
When in reality you could have played, let's say you end the game in 12 and the game had gone another 4 innings, you could have already had that figured out and you don't need to have them play an extra game. 4 innings or 9 innings.
But this is an extra game of 25 healthy, rested guys, not 25 exhausted, beaten down, bedraggled guys in the 18th inning.
I understand that, but then if we're talking this is a play-in game and you're running right into the postseason,
let me ask you this.
At that point, then you're already putting a team at a disadvantage.
Let me ask you this, just out of pure curiosity, would you rather watch the Cubs and the Cardinals play a playoff game because the Cubs have a tie on their record, or would you rather watch the Cubs lose 12 games in the regular season because that pitch that Rizzo took to his forearm ended up as a severe muscle tear on a throw to first base because he couldn't get the kink worked out of it and he needed to make it out at first base in the 17th inning?
Well, I'm not going to say I want to see the guy get injured, but I want to see baseball end the way baseball has always been played.
I understand that, and people want to see football.
And if you're worried about Rizzo, then take Rizzo out. If you're that worried, you could have pulled Rizzo out.
That's not the thing. You don't get worried about it, right? You're not worried about Rizzo, but things happen in baseball. He goes to make a funky throw to first base, puts too much arm into it, and that knot lets go, and it tears the muscle, and Rizzo's out 15 games or 60 games. Then what? Now you've ruined your season because you don't want to see baseball end in a tie. People don't want to see football end in a tie either, but they instituted that rule of only a single overtime period because they understand that having guys crash into each other at high speeds for more than a single extra period is dangerous to them. Having guys in baseball play 18 innings is dangerous for them.
I understand that, and we have seen, 3 ties in the last 3 years. But big picture, you're not seeing them all the time. Baseball is going to have extra inning games.
And big picture,
and there are going to be games that go beyond 12.
Big picture, 90% of those games aren't going to go beyond 12.
Exactly. So the ones that are, suck it up and finish off and play.
Okay, but the same thing in football, you could say that too because you don't have games that go beyond a single quarter, a single extra quarter. But you could say for the 3 or 4 that do, or the 1 or 2 that do per season, suck it up and play. But if a guy gets killed, that's not suck it up and play. If you lose a guy for 60 games or an entire season in baseball because he sucked it up and played, that ruins the game, in my opinion, more than having a tie. I get it.
Since we can't change the rule back in the NFL, I don't want it to change now. I just don't want the rule to change.
It's like kissing your sister. I get it. Ties suck. Nobody likes to watch a game end in a tie. But in my opinion, player safety, player fatigue, and the rest of the season have more riding on them than that single game ending in a tie. Look, I also don't want to be a guy who paid a ticket to go watch the Rockies and the Cubs play on the day after the Cubs played an 18-inning game and watch ridiculously subpar baseball from the Cubs because they didn't get any sleep last night. Do you want to be that fan? Do you want to be the guy that paid $60 for a ticket to watch the Cubs and the Rockies, who you thought was going to be a great game, but now the Rockies come in exhausted and they can barely play baseball, and that game is terrible? Is that what the kind of fan you want to be? Is that what you want to see?
That's the same kind of fan that we've been for the last however many years, 100 years?
Well, maybe the Cubs are a bad example because, yes, for the last 3 years they've sucked. But
all right. Now, guys, granted, if you again, let us know what you guys think, because that's the important thing here. You can hear Chris and I debate all you want, but let us know what you think. At OO Left Field on Twitter, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook, the Out of Left Field baseball community. We will look at some of your responses next week, but I think it's fair to say that this argument has gone on long enough. Some things do need to come to an end. Some of them are rather inauspicious. I think this might be one of them.
Well, speaking of things that have gone on far too long, Ryan Howard's career in baseball is probably over, as it should be. The Braves have released Ryan Howard. They announced on Monday that they were going to release him from his minor league contract. He's 37 years old, and in AAA at Gwinnett, he's hitting a measly, paltry 184 with a 238 on base and slugging 263 in his 42 plate appearances. In my opinion, Ryan Howard, who had a great run with the Phillies, who was just a key part of that Phillies championship team, he's done. It's over. Ryan, it's time for you to go back to Philadelphia, not as a ball player, but as either an announcer or a member of their front office.
Well, I mean, when you're Ryan Howard and you've been playing in the big leagues for 13 seasons, and your final year, obviously in the major leagues, you made Aaron Judge look good. There's kind of a problem, okay?
Ouch.
Hey, I'm sorry. Okay. Now, granted, Howard hit 25 dingers in 2016, but his average was 196. with a 710 OPS. Now, granted, yeah, he slugged 453, which is still, it's respectable, but his on base was 257. So
right. And
27 walks, 114 strikeouts.
When every ball you hit goes out of the park, your slugging is going to be high, but your batting average isn't.
Exactly. So yes, he's going to end up 18 homers shy of 400. I don't know if, I think we all thought that there was going to be a good possibility for him to, I think, be a Hall of Fame candidate. I don't know if he will end up being. He won the MVP in 2006. He was Rookie of the Year in 2005. I mean, honestly, was playing a bunch of games until 2010. Kind of tapered off. Had played in 143, and then obviously in 12 and 13 played in less than half of both those seasons' games, and then came back in 2014. But he was a high strikeout guy, almost 2.5 times the strikeouts to walks. To be fair, he did steal a dozen bags. He only got caught 5 times, so there's something. Got to appreciate that. But
yeah, and
just under 1,200 ribbies. I just don't know if he's going to be a Hall of Fame type of guy, unfortunately, when it comes time.
I don't think so. My personal opinion is that he won't. Not that he won't get any consideration. I'm sure he will, but I just don't think that he's going to get the number of votes that he's going to need to get into the Hall of Fame. When you see guys who you expect to go in, stay on the ballot for 10 years, I just don't see that Ryan Howard's going to be one of those guys that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll see the number 6 retired in Philadelphia. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But when your final stat line is a 258 average with a 343 on base and a 515 slugging, I mean, it's good, and you can look beyond, under 1,500 hits, under 400 dingers, under 1,200 ribbies. It's just unfortunate, a tip of your cap to Ryan Howard. It's unfortunate that he leaves after the minor league system, but it's just wasn't his thing, unfortunately.
And he'll go into the Phillies Hall of Fame, right? Their own team
right.
Hall of Fame, and he'll get his number retired. I'm sure you're right about that, because he was a great member of that Phillies team, and he did a lot for them. So, as sad as it is to see, and as sad as it is to say, obviously for guys like us who watched his whole career when we were young, it's going to be hard, but it's time, and good for him. I think, to be able to come to that realization. Hopefully he comes to it completely and just decides that it is time to go.
I think unfortunately that's probably where it's going to be. He had an MVP year, all that kind of stuff. But, just looking at the numbers, he's 155th all time in RBIs. He's 13th highest in strikeouts at 1,843. When it comes down to it, he's 67th all time in home runs, 70th in slugging percentage. It is going to be one of those things where, again, you tip your cap. It's unfortunate, like I said, that he was bought out by the Phillies. I hope that the Phillies will sign him to a one-day, allow him to retire as a Philly. He is saying he doesn't want to retire, but I think you and I both know that it is time. And obviously, in speaking of guys who retired and getting their jersey retired, we are going to talk about Derek Jeter here in just a second. So a tip of the cap to Ryan Howard. Congratulations on a great career. If you continue, good luck. But I think, end of the day, as Chris said, that a time in the booth in Philadelphia where you will be beloved for bringing a championship to that city, will be best for Ryan Howard.
Yeah. So we are going to talk about Derek Jeter. I mean, how can we not? The end of an era, right? But before we do that, we're going to get to two exciting pieces of housekeeping.
Wait a second. Hang on. Do you see that?
What?
I thought it was a bird.
No, it looks like a plane.
A plane?
Oh, no.
No, it's Kevin Pillar.
It's Kevin Pillar. out in center field. So, obviously, we're excited about these new segments. We love doing them. And our defender of the week this week is obviously Kevin Pillar. That move in center field to turn, sprint, and then lay all the way out. Not just lay all the way out, but he was a good 4 feet off the ground when he laid out horizontal.
We're talking full extension, head first towards the wall, baby.
Yeah, and he doesn't care. Then the thing about Kevin Pillar is this is just a Kevin Pillar thing to do. Kevin Pillar lays out. Kevin Pillar runs into walls. Whatever he has to do to make the catch, he's absolutely fearless of doing. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite him as he gets older, or
just
come back to bite him.
We are a family show, but for those of you who know what we're talking about, Kevin Pillar is the honey badger right now of Major League Baseball. That's all I'm going to say. All I'm going to say.
Exactly.
But if you know it, appreciate it. There you go.
But Pillar is going to take home the honor of Defender of the Week for this week. I know that we had said initially that this was going to focus on catchers, and we are going to try to focus on catchers, but how can you look at what Kevin Pillar did in center field this week and say, oh yeah, no, that doesn't qualify? And also, if you look at Kevin Pillar's numbers, I'd just like to point out that Kevin Pillar has played every single out in center field this season so far. He has started all 36, completed all 36, and has a perfect fielding percentage out there in center field. His range numbers are huge, obviously. He's a great center fielder. He's fast, he's agile, and he doesn't care. He doesn't, exactly. I mean, I'm sure he cares about putting his body on the line, but he's willing to do it, which is something that you don't see enough of, I think, in the outfield nowadays. None of this let a single fall in to bounce in front of me so I don't get hurt diving for it. Not for Kevin.
Right. And that really is it. I mean, like you said, it's sometimes a single play can kind of make you or break you. And this week there was no play bigger than that. So again, congratulations to Kevin Pillar, center fielder of the Toronto Blue Jays, for a spectacular catch and for being named the out of left field defender of the week. Absolutely.
Now, you had something interesting to discuss as we transition and take everybody behind the mask for our umpire segment. You had something rather interesting to discuss. What were you telling me about before the show, Graham?
So this has been happening not quite as much in high school, because in high school it has been placed in the rule book that it's illegal. Now, granted, most guys are not calling this that closely, but it's the initiation of a hybrid pitching stance. So, and Chris, while we do something, I'll let you kind of take a look at what I'm talking about here. So we've seen this twice in the last couple of years. It happened this past week in Tampa Bay when Bill Welke ejected Rays manager Kevin Cash. And then we also had an issue, I believe it was 2 seasons ago, where and I may be wrong, I believe it was John Tumpane, but either way, what ended up happening is a balk was called, I believe in Colorado against, I believe it was against the Padres, but a balk was called, and then the crew gets together and overturns it. And the reason they overturn it is because of this hybrid stance. So what is a hybrid stance? What I'm talking about, guys, and we'll put up a picture of this on Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham, our Facebook page, and also on our Twitter page at OO Left Field. What we've been used to for a long time is the traditional windup, right? Both heels are on the pitching plate. You go ahead and you begin that movement. You put your, whatever your pivot foot is into that kind of divot you've dug out, and then you high leg kick, and there you go. Or a normal stretch, which is pivot foot on the rubber, you're leaning out, come set and deliver. Well, now what we're starting to get is kind of a half and half, a hybrid of this, where it kind of looks like you're in the set because you got your pivot foot on the rubber, but you're kind of angled. And again, we'll put up a picture of this. So why the big deal with this? Well, Chris, as a pitcher, and I know you didn't pitch much, but you have pitched in the past. That's actually what you're hoping to do with your adult league you're getting into. You know that the big difference in being set and being in the windup is, A, you don't have to come to a complete stop in the windup. You begin the motion and you go through. Second of all, in the set, you can pick guys off. In the windup, you can't. You gotta step off of the rubber before you can pick somebody off, which is why we get steals of home, because once you're in the windup and you take off, you can't throw to third. You got to complete the entire pitch. So this new rule in baseball for 2017, which I hadn't even heard of this, states that with a runner or runners on base, a pitcher will be presumed to be pitching from the set position if he stands with his pivot foot in contact with and parallel to the pitcher's plate and his other foot in front of the pitcher's plate. Unless he notifies the umpire, he will be pitching from the wind-up position under such circumstances prior to the at-bat. Again, new rule for this year that is geared specifically to this hybrid stance. So what we're seeing is guys who are basically holding their gloves in the traditional set that you've been used to, and then they're making secondary moves as they would if they were coming through a windup. They're going ahead and reshifting the glove. They're actually planting that pivot foot into that divot created, and they're pushing off towards home to deliver the baseball. It is causing confusion for all parties concerned, for umpires, for players alike. It's why we've had balks called. It's why there have been ejections. It's why that there has been this rule notified. And the umpire manual for this year says that once the pitcher notifies the home plate umpire of his intention to pitch from the windup, umpire should call time, should indicate to the other members of the crew in each club that the pitcher has elected to pitch from the windup. Again, this is all new to me. I had never heard this. I didn't know this was a new rule. So something to think about, guys, as you see it. You'll begin to see this more often, and like I said, we'll put up a couple of pictures on our social media pages, but it is causing a bit of a stir. It is illegal in high school ball, and I think what you're going to see is pretty soon, this is probably going to work its way out relatively quick because of the issues that it's causing. When you do something like this that is really on that cusp of it could be this or it could be that, and you put that judgment into the umpire's hands, there is that possibility that we will have a balk called like what happened in Tampa Bay, which ends up being an ejection for Rays manager Kevin Cash. So that is behind the mask, something a little bit different, something you guys may not have noticed, but hopefully gives you a little bit more insight into what's happening on the field, on the mound, and behind those masks for the Major League umpires.
So as we kind of wrap everything up and we start to say goodbye for another week, we want to talk about another goodbye. Derek Jeter's number 2 was retired, or is being retired. By the time most of you hear this show, it will have been retired, but it's in real time. It's being retired tomorrow on Sunday, on Mother's Day, in the big city, and they're going to pay tribute to Derek Jeter. Which you can hate the Yankees all you want, but there's no way that you can say that this isn't something that Derek Jeter absolutely deserves.
Without a doubt. I mean, he has been he was the face of Major League Baseball for almost 2 decades. Did things the right way. Regardless of what rumors you've heard about his love life and whatever off the field happened, he didn't bring that crap on the field. What he did, he checked his issues at the door. He played the game the right way. If you really want to get mad at Jeter for something, it's the ball hit the knob of the bat, and he played it like it hit his hand. Oh, man, he cheated. Everybody does that. You get the advantage you can. When it comes down to it, there was no doubt Derek Jeter played the game the right way. He played it, a beautiful job at shortstop. He was a young kid who came up kind of out of nowhere and made his mark and just never stopped. I will say it makes you wonder if he had not won the World Series as many times as he did, as young as he did, would he have had the same mark on the game as he did? And I think that's, I think his fingerprint on the game of baseball is going to end up being a product of George Steinbrenner, of drafting him, of bringing him up, of putting him in one of the roughest spots to play on the field at shortstop as a very young kid and trusting that he could get it. And you keep him there, he becomes the captain. When you're in a city that big and you are looked at as the captain, you were the leader. There are only two guys in baseball who I can think of to have ever had that moniker. And of all things, it happens to be on the two teams with the biggest rivalry in this game. And that was Jason Varitek with the Red Sox, who wore the C, and Derek Jeter of the New York Yankees.
Yeah. This is going to be sort of an emotional day for New York. Not just for the Yankees, not just for Derek Jeter, but for New York as a whole, because they're going to see a kid who's not a New Yorker by birth, but is absolutely a New Yorker by what he has done and accomplished for that city and their baseball team. And they're going to watch him, hang his uniform up, and it'll be the last time anybody wears that number 2, which I believe is going to go a long way towards preventing anyone wearing the numbers 1 through 10 in New York ever. I believe this is one of the last few numbers in single digits on the team that's not retired.
This is the final single digit number. This is it. Once 2 goes, so. It will be. Everyone's giving Aaron Judge junk for wearing a number 99, a spring training, newbie who has no chance of making the club number. You guys understand that in the next 15 years, that's probably all that's going to be freaking left. Like now we're going to have -1 and -2, and we're going to start going backwards down the freaking number scale for these guys. At some point, what are you going to do?
Nobody in pinstripes is going to be wearing low numbers here in the coming years. But you talk about people getting angry at Jeter for taking that shot on the knob of the bat and acting like it hit his hands. Any player that's not wearing pinstripes that does that, nobody bats an eye at it. Derek Jeter does it, everybody loses their mind. It's because
very
he's
nice
Derek
homage
Jeter.
to Keith Ledger there.
It's because he's Derek Jeter. It's because he's a Yankee that people get all upset about that. If their team's star player did it, they don't care.
Right. And let's be honest, the ending of his career. His whole career was something really out of a movie. A guy who just does things the right way. Leads a team, is always there. Obviously, he goes down with the ankle. You think it's over. He won the 5th ring, and then the ankle breaks, and we don't know what's going to happen. Mo is gone. All the big guys are on the way out, and then he comes back, and in his final game, gets a walk-off single against Baltimore. I believe it was against Baltimore to win the game. It was on September 25th, 2014, and then gets a single his final time in Boston. And gets a standing ovation at the end of the day, and that is one thing I will say I love about that rivalry. It is deep, it is dark, it is very long rooted, if you will. But when someone who has made a huge mark on one of those franchises for a long time hangs up the cleats, they get a very warm, a very fair reception because at the end of the day, those two cities love baseball. They may not do it right, which we've discussed and we will continue to discuss, throughout the season. But David Ortiz, Mariano Rivera, Derek Jeter, they send those guys off with class. They may not treat everybody else in Major League Baseball with class, but they send those guys off with class, which it's at least nice to see that when it does happen.
So, I just want to correct a little bit about Derek Jeter's last at bat. The last at bat of Derek Jeter's career came at Fenway Park. He hit an RBI single off Clay Buchholz in the 3rd inning. That was the last at bat of his career.
Okay.
His last at bat at Yankee Stadium was the walk-off game-winning hit. Which
right, I thought I said last at bat at Yankee Stadium, but yeah, you're right. Yep.
Yeah, it was his last at bat at Yankee Stadium that was a walk-off, which of course is the only way that career can end at Yankee Stadium, right? For Derek Jeter, is in a walk-off hit.
He leads the Yankees in hits. He's in the 3,000 hit club. He gets there by hitting a dinger. If You couldn't, if you wrote this movie about this guy and the way things happened, everyone would tell you this is a cliche movie. There's no drama. Get it the hell off my desk.
Right, exactly. Or that it was fake. That it was too unbelievable.
Exactly.
And a lot of times the things that go on in baseball are too unbelievable to be a fiction. But Derek Jeter himself has decided that, understanding that this is going to be an emotional day for him, for the team, for the city, he decided to release a statement prior to his retirement or his jersey retirement ceremony, and I wanted to read it because it's short and it's elegant and it's to the point. Derek Jeter writes, "Thank you, New York," is the name of the letter that he wrote to the city, and it says, "New York, I want to tell you a story about a kid who grew up in the Midwest in a town called Kalamazoo. Quiet, unsure, and at times a little intimidated. A homebody at heart. About a kid with a dream who moved to a big city. To the big city. A kid who was just trying to keep up with everyone else. A lot was asked of that kid, and I always respected the challenge to prove myself each and every day. The lights were always bright. The pace was always fast. The stakes were always high and the expectations higher. And in those difficult moments, those moments that feel unique to New York, you always showed me a sign. All I had to do was look. It was a little girl's tip of her cap, or a shout from across the street, or a rallying chant from the upper decks of Yankee Stadium that made its way down to the field, or the support from teammates who taught me about the spirit of this city, that we're all in this together and we have to look out for one another. New York, I'll never forget how you looked out for me. And throughout 20 years in pinstripes, I learned that despite the pace and the pressure, one code truly makes this city go. Get up each day, put on your uniform, go to work, do your best, and don't make excuses. That's all New York ever really asked for, and that's what I tried to do. Thank you, New York, for asking a lot of me, for challenging me, for giving this kid a place to grow up. I wasn't born a New Yorker. You asked me to earn it. I wasn't born a Yankee, but you made me into one. Everyone comes to this city with dreams of being number one. You showed me that being number two was more than enough. Today, I'm no longer that kid. I've hung up my uniform, and I know this much for a fact. I wouldn't be the person I am today without you, because the truth is, no matter where you go in the world, when a place feels like home, as New York does to me, you never really leave. It will always be with you.
Very elegant, and I think that is the way to end the show. A tip of the cap to Derek Jeter, a classy career, a great career, and a well-deserved honor to be put up at Yankee Stadium, and we will see you in 4 years' time in Cooperstown, New York. We will let famed former New York Yankees stadium announcer Bob Shepard take us out. For Chris, I'm Graham. See you next week on Out of Left Field.
Now batting for the New York Yankees, the shortstop, number 2, Derek Jeter.